£86. That's how much more, on average, we'll all be paying for our water from April. It's a far cry from what many expected. This government promised relief from the cost of living crisis. They campaigned on lowering energy bills, with the suggestion that water bills might follow. But any hope of easing the burden seems increasingly distant. And if you thought Starmer's performance at PMQs was disastrous, just wait until you hear what's happening within the Labour Party. Now, let's turn to the rise in water bills. This hike is all to fund an enormous investment, £104 billion, to clean up waterways and overhaul our water infrastructure. That's a staggering figure. To put it in perspective, it's more than we spend on our armed forces, nearly twice as much in fact. Keir Starmer has essentially signed, sealed, and delivered his party's death warrant. Anti-Labour sentiment is sweeping the streets. And honestly, who else is to blame?
To 100 Labour MPs, Jonathan, Guardian says, could, if there's a vote, which the Labour government would contrive for there not to be a vote, but the Lib Dems are saying they can have an opposition day debate.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be a binding vote.
It wouldn't be a binding vote, but it would be pretty dramatic if 100 MPs don't support their own government.
I think that, look, I think on the raw policy here, I'm in a difficult position of a political commentator by being able to see both sides and both sides of the argument.
Public support for Starmer is waning, while resentment toward the Tories seems to have given Labour a once commanding advantage. Yet Starmer has managed to erode that support. During Labour's campaign to get into government, there were promises. Rachel Reeves, Liz Kendall, Angela Rayner, all assured voters the money would come. And now this. As for the Prime Minister, after months of deceit and betrayal, you'd think we'd be beyond shock. Yet here we are. What Starmer has done is appalling. It's not just a failure to mitigate the damage. He's left everyone reeling in outright fear. One can only conclude he holds the British people in contempt. Every unconvincing response only worsens the situation. The pressing question now is, how many more missteps will it take before the party collapses entirely? Labour Party headquarters is in complete disarray, with staff scrambling for a unified strategy. Yet, every attempt at damage control seems to deepen the crisis. A solution appears increasingly out of reach. Did they not anticipate the need for proper planning? Take Starmer's remarks yesterday, for instance. He claimed, incorrectly, that 90% of the women impacted were aware of the pension changes. The Ombudsman has stated otherwise, pointing out that only 60% were informed. That leaves 40% blindsided, unable to prepare for a change they had no knowledge of. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You can't look away, even though you know it's going to end disastrously. The real issue? Nobody seems to grasp what's truly happening. Some Labour officials dismiss the accusations as baseless, brushing them off as if nothing's amiss. They argue their statements were taken out of context. Meanwhile, others, prone to panic, admit fault. The result? Total chaos, with no sign of improvement. Sir Keir Starmer is on track to become one of the most unpopular prime ministers in modern history. After just 5 months in office, his ratings are worse than any prime minister since the late 1970s. Could anyone have predicted this? The man who swept into power on promises of change, stability, and a fresh start after years of Tory turmoil. What went wrong? This debacle has left political commentators stunned. Can you blame them? As one analyst quipped, "I've seen more coherent arguments in a primary school at snack time." Labour's communication strategy is in complete shambles. Recent staffing changes have only exacerbated the problem. The PR team is overloaded with too many voices, and it's glaringly obvious they lack the expertise to handle a crisis of this scale. Is this just the beginning? Let's start with the numbers. They're damning. A recent Ipsos poll reveals that 61% of voters are dissatisfied with Starmer's performance, while only 27% are satisfied. Surprising it's that high, really. That leaves him with a net satisfaction score of -34. The worst rating for a Prime Minister after 5 months in office in Ipsos's polling history, which stretches back to Margaret Thatcher's era. In Westminster, rumours are swirling that even more damning evidence could emerge in the coming days. You can see the unease etched on the faces of Labour staffers, their expressions tightening every time their phones buzz. What fresh crisis will erupt next? It's becoming increasingly clear that the Labour Party is not only struggling to control the situation, but is teetering dangerously close to catastrophe. Other Prime Ministers have faced difficult starts, so let's compare. Gordon Brown, who took office during the onset of the financial crisis, recorded a net satisfaction score of -23 after 5 months. Rishi Sunak, grappling with the fallout from Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget, managed -22. Starmer's -34 makes those figures look like glowing reviews. So what's gone so horribly wrong for the man who promised to bring stability after years of Conservative chaos? Labour's attempts to stem the tide of leaks and scandals resemble plugging a dam with chewing gum. The crucial question now is, how long can this chaos continue before decisive action is taken? Will there be a wave of resignations? Is the leadership fundamentally flawed? Or will they try to weather the storm and wait it out? One thing is certain. Opposition parties are relishing the disorder and gearing up to exploit every misstep. As Labour flounders, their rivals are preparing to strike. The political turbulence is far from over. Starmer and his team urgently need to regroup. Opponents are seizing the moment, demanding Starmer step down as the pressure intensifies. Like a pack of wolves closing in on their prey, opposition parties are pouncing on this opportunity. Starmer has now pointed to the economy as an excuse, claiming instability, a situation critics argue his party has exacerbated. Previously stable, the economy is now being cited as the justification for policies that fail to adequately address voter concerns. For example, Labour's proposed compensation for pension losses, £1,000 to £2,500 per person, is far from trivial, but it doesn't come close to covering the years of lost income people were expecting. The situation deteriorated further when a Labour council member defected to the Conservative Party, citing disillusionment with Starmer's leadership. Calls for his resignation are growing louder by the day, leaving him teetering on the brink. Conservative groups in local areas are taking full advantage of the disarray, accusing Labour of neglecting the needs of residents and ignoring local interests. These sharp criticisms are resonating with voters who are increasingly questioning Starmer's ability to lead. First, there's the freebies scandal. Keir Starmer, who campaigned on a platform of integrity and transparency, now finds himself mired in controversy over accepting high-value gifts and hospitality. Taylor Swift tickets, a corporate box at Arsenal Football Club, and even designer glasses worth nearly £2,500. These are not a good look for a man who vowed to clean up politics. It smacks of hypocrisy. This crisis is rapidly eroding the Labour Party's legitimacy, alienating undecided voters, and shaking the confidence of even the party's staunchest supporters. It feels as if Labour's trust bank is about to run dry. If Starmer doesn't act swiftly, the party risks a devastating loss in the next election. The question now is, will any major figures abandon ship before it completely sinks? Cracks are beginning to appear in Labour's united front, and reports of internal discord are spreading like toxic fumes behind the scenes. The vultures are circling, waiting to pounce when Starmer inevitably stumbles. Let's be honest, the public has never truly warmed to Sir Keir Starmer, and as more truths about him come to light, it's hard to imagine they ever will. Rumours of far worse scandals abound online, salacious and spicy tales. Are they true? Well, I couldn't possibly comment. But one thing is certain, his voter base is thinning fast. If he's not careful, he could be out by Christmas. This turkey is heading straight for the oven. The pressure is mounting. High-profile voices in British politics are openly calling for Starmer's immediate resignation, and the Labour Party is grappling with a full-blown crisis that threatens its very survival. The party is fracturing into factions as it becomes increasingly clear that Starmer's leadership may not endure. The next few days will be critical, both for Starmer and the party as a whole, which is teetering on the brink of collapse. Meanwhile, Starmer is due to make a rare state visit to Britain. Yes, you read that correctly. Since taking office, he's clocked up an astonishing 37 flights, spending the equivalent of an entire working month, around 165 hours, in the air. By our count, Starmer may hold the dubious honour of having the largest carbon footprint of any single person in Britain. He seems rather fond of the UK government's Airbus A321. Perhaps he should consider spending a little more time on the ground, before the ground beneath him disappears entirely. The Labour Party is descending into disarray, with Keir Starmer's leadership coming under constant scrutiny. As various factions within the party sense an opportunity to consolidate power, the once united front is crumbling like a house of cards. The divide between Starmer's supporters and critics is widening, fueling tension and dissatisfaction. Labour Party representatives have made some startling admissions. A senior figure within the party has voiced serious doubts about the party's trajectory under Starmer's leadership. Some of us are beginning to question whether he has the ability to unite the party or deliver on his promises. It's hard to imagine what state Labour will end up in. The truth of the matter is, they came to power largely because the Conservatives had become deeply unpopular. And now, Labour seems determined to remind everyone why the Tories managed to hold on to power for 14 years. Take Starmer himself, a man reportedly worth £10 million. And yet, there's talk that he couldn't even manage to purchase his wife's... Well, you get the point. The speed at which his once loyal supporters are beginning to distance themselves is staggering. Those who were backing him just days ago are now scrambling to disassociate themselves. It's a remarkable turnaround. What do you make of this unfolding drama? If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments below.